Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, a World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen. And as we've seen a massive sell-off in stock markets around the world, it's a global everything bubble that's bursting that we've been talking about a lot in recent days. It's one of the craziest things we've ever seen. The yield curve's inverting, the dollar isn't looking good, and I know a lot of you out there are looking at, how can I protect myself? How can I protect my wealth? How can I ensure that I don't get caught in this obvious storm that is brewing, and not just brewing at this point, it's starting to come down. So for that reason, I think we're going to talk about what a lot of people are insuring their wealth with, which is gold and silver. And we've talked about gold and silver in a dollar crash before. Let's talk about it today in a stock market crash, because this is a domino effect that's happening worldwide. And when the governments and banks are attempting to stock up on gold and silver, then we got to ask why. Why are they doing that? What are they preparing for? What do they know is on the horizon? And at this point, it's become so public as we're seeing this market come down that I think we know what they're preparing for at this point. I think the speculation is kind of off the table now. So with that said, John, we've talked about the gold-silver ratio in the past. We know how that coincides with market booms and busts. And I wanted you to kind of go into why people should look. And again, this is our opinion, not investment advice. In fact, gold and silver, it's not meant to be an investment. It's wealth insurance.
History.
It's protecting your purchasing power. But John, can you go into why gold and silver in a stock market crash and what it can how it can actually keep people's money safe?
Well, what's going to happen is you're going to have a massive sell-off in everything. So you're going to see gold and silver actually going down as well, together with the stock market. There was an article just recently that I was looking at before this video that was talking about every single major asset that is down and negative for the year. And that should tell everybody that we're in the everything bubble. But what always happens, and look at 2008, look at 2000, gold and silver followed down for a bit with everything else, because
and by the way, the Dow and S&P are at levels that we haven't seen in a week period since 2008.
Yeah, no, it's getting there for sure. The actual levels and everything that it's down. So we're seeing a huge issue with the whole stock market that is starting to show some serious weaknesses. And we saw the start of it. We were talking about in February. We did videos on the stock market talking about these are the tremors of what's to come. And sure enough, you get another massive volatility now right before Christmas. Is a nice present to everybody. And of course, hopefully the government will shut down. Actually shut down. Who knows? Maybe the new year comes and we don't have a government anymore. That would be the best present ever in history. But, I don't think that's where we're going to go.
And on top of that, you mentioned the videos we did in February when we saw the tremors and everything. And then with those tremors, we saw something very reminiscent to 1929, where, as we mentioned back then, it wasn't that was the end. And then we can't really put a date on the end of the stock market. Really, we can't put a date on when it's going to bottom out. But with that said, we saw in 1929 a slow incremental move downwards, but people are still bullish and everything's going up to the moon, they said. All the speculation and the shoe shine boys giving, big investors advice. And we know how that ended in October 1929. John, people back then and people today and people throughout history have looked at gold and silver as a great way to insure their wealth.
100% they have, Josh. I would just want to mention before I go into the history of gold and silver, on YouTube, on our channel even, they've been mass amounts of YouTube commercials about options trading, about how to get into trading and so on. Mass amounts of that, but now they're all gone. I wonder why. Like, they've been gone for the last month or so.
Can I also add that they have been purging subscribers like crazy from our channel, shadow banning us to death so that our videos aren't being seen by people. A bunch of people getting unsubscribed, not just spam accounts. People are messaging us in mass saying that they're being unsubscribed. People aren't being notified. Our videos after 24 hours, first of all, they'll get like 1,800 views in the first hour, and then by 24 hours later, they have a little bit more than that, and they are just not being seen anymore. They get 10 views over the next month. It is complete shadow banning, and I think it has a lot to do with what's currently happening here in order to ease the tensions, as conspiracy-minded as that sounds.
Well, I think we've kind of gotten away with it a lot because there haven't been any crisis yet, any prominent crisis, because me and Josh are talking about finance and economics and geopolitics, mostly focusing on the finance and economics part, and there hasn't been like a huge problem yet, but now we're really starting to see it around the world, and I believe that's most likely why they're coming after us. And also, people liking videos. I talk to people liking our videos, and then they go back to the video again. It's like the like is not there anymore.
Yeah, so or they'll demonetize us, yet they'll still put commercials on. So they say it's not suitable for advertisers. For you guys, we get to take all the money. Yeah. I think it's insane. And of course, we got 700 plus subscribers gone a few days ago, and then they said, oh, that was all part of getting rid of spam accounts. And then within the last couple hours, as I do this video, another about 200 subscribers near that have just been wiped out of our channel, and there's no no reasoning, there's no excuses made at this point. It's just our channel is getting hit really hard and we're not getting views. It's really brutal. But anyway, back to gold and silver. This is really important because because when it comes to the gold silver ratio, it tells us a lot throughout history, and it tells us why we should be looking at gold and silver as wealth insurance.
Oh, exactly, Josh. And the gold silver ratio, if you just take it, I got a chart in front of me here that it's the last 30 years. And if you take a look at it, it's interestingly enough, you got the crash of 87 on here, you got the crash of 2000s, you got the crash of 2008, and it looks very similar to that. We're entering into something very similar to another crash, because if you look at this chart, every single major market crash, it just popped straight, like a little bit above the ratio, which is currently 85.75. So it takes 85.75 units of silver to buy 1 unit of gold, and that is insane. The undervaluation of silver. But what that shows us, and you can see on the chart here, right as it pops above, like just a little bit above 80, that's when you have a financial crisis happening. I don't know if there's any correlation between that, Josh. There might be, but from here, you see 3 big financial crisis, and it popped above 80 on all of them, and now we're at 85.75 currently. And the normal ratio, you're looking at it dropping down here. It drops down to, in 2008, it dropped as low as 30 something, the ratio. So it's a massive drop, and you get silver really accelerating way past gold when it comes to price discovery, because silver is massively undervalued. First of all, like you have the major miners, like First Majestic, which is one of the only actual silver only miners. They are, producing silver under cost. So they're actually losing money on producing silver. And then, of course, all the other metals, like zinc and all these other mines that they're mining silver, what they are looking at is during a crisis, all the commodities are down as well, because that tells us, there's not as much economic activity as it was anymore, because nobody's buying these commodities to create and use things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something else we have to mention is that gold and silver are vastly manipulated by the banks and governments around the world. We've seen this going back a long ways. John has gone into the Exchange Stabilization Fund as well in a video. And these are master manipulators. They seize the gold under FDR, use that gold to fund the Exchange Stabilization Fund, and then also what was remaining to fund the IMF. We've seen this massive push towards fiat currencies, then to digital fiat currencies, then to we're already completely digital at this point. But anyway, that's centralized, of course, which is the main point to be made there, not decentralized. But with gold and silver, of course, it's vastly undervalued because it's vastly manipulated. And when the banks push that down like a beach ball, I always call it a beach ball effect because it bounces up once that structure comes down, that which is holding it down. And when the banks are all bankrupt, they're not looking good. Their share prices are crashing like a rock, almost all of them basically around the world. Then we have to think, well, if they're holding gold and silver down, what happens when they go down and gold and silver is free to actually move within the market under individual demand? I mean, that's a huge factor to play into it. But of course, there is a huge power shift happening where a lot of countries like Russia are stocking up on gold, China is stocking up on gold, and Germany and stuff, and while countries like Canada sell off all their gold, like we confronted Finance Minister Bill Morneau on. And Venezuela is almost out, and they're fighting for whatever remaining gold they have. So it's crazy.
They can't get a hold of it. It's stuck at the Fed, and of course the Fed is very afraid because the Venezuelan government owes $48 billion to banks in the United States, like Citibank. So they are afraid of giving up that gold because they don't have any collateral to actually get back back any of the fake money that they lent out to the Venezuelan government. Now, but again, back to Venezuela, for example, looking at how did gold perform in Venezuela? Well, it performed really good, not as good as Bitcoin actually, but it performed but it performed really, really good in Venezuela as well during the crisis, because what happens when people are looking for, they're losing everything in all the paper assets, they're looking for something of value, and every crisis, even if it's a devaluation of a currency or entering into a hyperinflationary state, they always are looking for ways to save themselves from the losing value of the legal tender that are currently in the country, and they move to things of value. They buy food, they buy water, anything that holds value. But also a lot of people, the people that really thrive, that I've listened to stories, for example, from Yugoslavia, where people that had gold and silver, well, they become actually very wealthy on the other side. It's a massive wealth transfer that we will see. It's starting now, and it's coming soon. I don't know exactly the time frame of when this is going to just pop, but what I do know from history and what it's told us is that when these crises comes, they'll come, and then suddenly we'll be in the middle of it, and then you're going to be, I can't get anything to protect myself because I didn't prepare myself for what would be coming, because I didn't read history, I didn't understand things. And most people are like that. Nobody really have been taught anything about monetary history, because for a reason they want people to be unaware of all these things that they could do to protect themselves. Meanwhile, you have JP Morgan is buying massive amounts of silver, physical silver that is, and you have also I'm not going to mention who's buying it, but there's somebody here in Winnipeg, and you could kind of do your own research.
In Canada, Winnipeg's in Canada.
That are accumulating mass amounts of silver, and if you go and look up who that could be, you can make your own conclusions. But I don't want to have anybody coming after me for saying who's storing all that silver, of course.
But I could imagine that it looks like a giant pyramid. Anyway, so I wanted to talk a little bit as we close it off, about the fact that, of course, the establishment is getting desperate at this point, and they're desperately attempting to take over these markets. They're desperately attempting to stock up on all this gold and silver, and that's a great example of why maybe other people should look at that as well themselves. But overall, there's a huge power shift happening, and all fiat currencies eventually revert to their true value of zero. They always have, they always will, going back to 1024 AD in China, and this time won't be any different. And we have to understand that this value, the value of gold, it comes from scarcity, application use, demand. This is very important when it comes to the subjectivity of value. And going forward, you're going to want to get involved in all that. But I know that a lot of you, some of you maybe, one way or another, we always get these comments. I know some of you are going to comment, well, you can't eat gold. And we've been explaining this whole thing for years.
Explained is if you want to actually be rich on the other side, you will. It would be very wise to have something.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes down to it, you shouldn't just look towards gold and silver. It's food, water, shelter, self-defense. You're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block, and then gold and silver. I mean, there's prime points to the survival of humanity, and those things come down to very simple concepts. It's value. It's self-sustainability, independence, all that kind of stuff. It's food, water, shelter, all that. That's very important. And then, of course, having your defense to be able to defend your values that you have. And, of course, diversification is great, too, because, obviously, as you mentioned, like in Venezuela, people are using cryptocurrencies en masse, and it's been very, very, very helpful to them. Decentralized, of course, make sure it's always fundamentally valuable and decentralized based in scarcity, application, use, and demand. But anyway, the point is there are solutions. There's tons of solutions, and for the first time in history, we get to test these grounds with all of these solutions because we have more than ever. And I believe that we are going to see a massive, not just power shift within the countries around the world, but a power shift back to the individual, as the individual demand will take over based on the solutions, whether it be blockchain infrastructure, if decentralized, gold and silver, all these things. I think they are going to be important for us to shift away from the governmental and bankster cartels, the organized crime rackets, towards a new free market, decentralized future where, regardless of your beliefs, socialist, conservative, libertarian, anarchist, I don't care, it doesn't matter. In the end, these things are the future, and we will move towards the future, and those technologies and these great ways to ensure wealth will abolish all of these things that have stood in our way and are completely inefficient and coercive all this time. I think we have a lot to learn about this. I think that we are on a good path, believe it or not, as crazy and terrible as the news might sound from time to time, but all the same, I think we are living in a good time. So John, as we close it off, what's your bottom line?
Well, the bottom line is you got to remember if things hit the fan, which they will at one point, just start to look around your local community and see what's important there. You know, what commodities is very clear that your community needs, and then go out and accumulate those and make sure that you share those. And during a crisis, people will come to you because you have the most important things in your region of what they need to survive. So that's another thing. But then, of course, when it comes to having your gold and silver and other cryptocurrencies and so on, that like you could get out of the system with, instead of having what's coming for us is asset freezes, capital controls. So you, like, look at what happened in Greece, where you could get 60 euros out a day out of the bank account.
You mentioned bail-in regimes and that.
Oh, of course, yeah. There's massive collapse coming. Like, look at, for example, Goldman Sachs is down 35% over the year so far. That's one of the major banks in the world that are down that much. So it's just a warning sign of what is coming. But just make sure that you prepare yourself. You pick up a history book or something. If you're here in Canada, pick up my book, Canada, the Greatest Economy in the World, ?
Or The End of Freedom, How Our Monetary System Enslaves Us, also both up on Amazon, because I know most of our audience is outside of Canada. It's really important that we understand these things.
Oh, 100%. Just educate yourself. Go out. You don't even need to read my books. Go and find books from Mike Maloney and others that are experts in the field. Just educate yourself and know how to position yourself during a crisis, because if you don't, you will get eviscerated, unfortunately, and it's going to be really sad for those people. I don't want this to happen to anybody, but it will happen, unfortunately, because we've blown a bubble of epic proportion with all these mass amounts of debt slushing around the world, creating distortions in markets, all the manipulation from the big powers, the big banks, manipulating down the prices of real commodities to try to hide the real value of these things, and trying to, here's the price discovery in these fake paper assets over here, the ETFs. And meanwhile, if you actually counted for, it was our friend Stephen P. Kendall. He's talking about, it's more like 56,000 an ounce for gold if you really counted 1-to-1 for the assets versus the contract. So you got to come back to the most important part is you need to understand how the monetary system works and start to protect yourself, because if you don't, you will get hurt really bad during the next crisis.
Yeah, and the inflation rate is way higher than it appears. Look at shadow stats. I mean, there's so much.
In the store.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's come to that point, and obviously these things are very undervalued for that reason. And I think that as we close this off, folks, we have to all go and do our own due diligence and research and understand these things, because an educated public is a strong, resilient, 100%. Independent populace. So anyway, so as we close this off, thanks for going into this with us, John. We'll be back with you with much more on this subject matter. There's so much more to talk about. There's so many books to read. There's so many things to look at. Everything from economics in one lesson, Rothbard, Hayek, Mises, Ron Paul. There's great people out there that have done a lot of effort, put a lot of effort into educating people about this subject matter. And there's no excuses anymore in the age of information to be prepared. You have to be prepared, be over-prepared rather than under-prepared, be decentralized, rule yourself, break free from that system, and build your own system in your own backyard. Anyway, thanks for going into this with us, John. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here, OM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so vastly demonetized and censored on YouTube, as these guys come in and flag all of our content as hate speech. Also, check out our Bitcoin address below, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also check us out at steemit.com. We're at Josh Sigurdson. It's a future of social media where you get paid in the upvote of your post in cryptocurrency. Steem, that is. So make sure to check us out there. Make sure to join us at Anarchapulco 2019 with people like Ron Paul, G. Edward Griffin, of course, Jeff Berwick, Vid Jedlicka. So many incredible speakers are going to be speaking. It's just a massively growing event. It is something you have to see to believe. So make sure to check it out below and save money on your tickets by using promo code WAM, that's WAM, and I hope to see you there. Also, check out our newsletter as we are getting demonetized and censored and all that. We don't know what comes next, so we have an email, worldalternativemedia@gmail.com. Send us an email with subject line YES, YES, and we will include you in the newsletter where we will continuously keep you updated. So until next time, thanks for watching, everyone. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.
Bye.